In theaters now, in a surprising turn, in a wide release, is the latest Godzilla film from Japan. The official, actual, real Godzilla movies from Toho. We're getting them in the United States on the big screen. It's a wonderful time to be alive. Is from 2023 Godzilla minus one. This is an interesting approach to a Godzilla film. This is a 70th anniversary Godzilla celebration, it says at the beginning of the film in English letters that we can read. And this is a standalone film. This is not another Godzilla adventure, well, technically it kind of is, but this is not the next film in the ongoing Godzilla series moving forward in time. This takes us all the way back minus one, so to speak. The original Godzilla from the early 50s was set in post-war Japan, and it dealt with the original Godzilla, if you've never seen it, sometimes called Gojira for whatever reason here, from the 50s, not the American version with Raymond Burr, Godzilla King of the Monsters, but the original Godzilla was a moody, excellent black and white film that really dealt with the effects of the atomic bomb being dropped on Japan and the cultural angst and dealing with that in the form of this giant monster that breathed fire and used radiation to kill masses of people and destroy cities. This film takes us back to that. It doesn't take us back to that story. It's not really a remake of the original Godzilla film. This is more another standalone, let's say Godzilla showed up for the first time during the later days, during the final stages of World War II in Japan, and how would that might have played out. It's a very realistic type approach to a Godzilla film. The majority of the film isn't really about Godzilla. I'm gonna get out in front of this and say this is going to be a dissenting opinion on this film. Everybody that I've been reading about, as of right now, the film has only been in theaters one day. Everything I've read from everybody, people are losing their minds over this film. They're saying maybe the best Godzilla movie ever, maybe the best movie of the year, one of the greatest Godzilla films of all time. I particularly didn't really care for it, but I want to talk to you about what this film is. So the part of the difficulty with any Godzilla film being successful is, in my mind, you can't have it just be monster action. That's why we go to see these, but 90 minutes of nothing but nonverbal monsters beating each other up, it gets tiring after a while. It's something I read years ago, a quote that I always think about is, there's nothing quite so exhausting as being consistently amazed. And that is true. It's true of a lot of special effects movies. And it's always a delicate balance between, you have to have the human drama and the human element in the Godzilla films to balance the monster stuff. And what is that balance? What is the percentage of humans versus monsters? Sometimes it leans a little too far toward the humans, and you're like, I kind of came to pay to see a monster movie. And sometimes it's so much monsters, the human stuff is just there to kill time between the fights. This film leans a lot into the human element, and it's really well done. Like, I was watching this and I'm thinking, this might make a decent film if you took Godzilla out of it. There really actually isn't a lot of Godzilla in this movie. And while I'm watching the film, I'm thinking about the title, and I'm like, Godzilla minus one. Yeah, minus one Godzilla. There is Godzilla in the film, and Godzilla is impressive in this film. And this, like any Godzilla movie, you need to see this on the big screen. The bigger, the better. You want that Godzilla on that screen to be as close to actual size as possible. I saw this at an AMC in a Dolby theater, which is renowned for its large screen, bright picture, and rumble-rama sound. And let me tell you, when Godzilla roared, you felt it in the theater, and you felt that sense of danger. And when Godzilla would stomp his foot down, the whole place, or your seat certainly shook, and it was really cool. It was like being there. Not that you really want to be there, because chances are you're going to be killed by Godzilla, but in watching a Godzilla film, is as immersive as it can be, is great. So the basic storyline here, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, is it's set in the very final days of World War II in Japan. A kamikaze pilot lands on an island that is like a little island in the Japanese area that is used for repairing and sending planes on their way. He claims mechanical trouble. What really it is that he can't go through with the kamikaze mission. He's sort of chickened out, as it were, doesn't want to sacrifice himself. And while he's on the ground dealing with that, while he's being told, there's nothing really wrong with your plane by all those guys, Godzilla shows up and wreaks havoc on this island. And this man is given the opportunity to get into his plane. Guns do function as well as the rest of it, and take Godzilla out with a machine gun. He freezes, he doesn't, and Godzilla winds up wreaking serious human collateral damage on that island. So the rest of the film takes place a bit of time later, where this man has met up with a woman who was on her own in the ravages of Japan. Not Godzilla ravaged Japan, but atomic bomb ravaged Japan, or air raids and atomic braids and all that sort of thing. And it's a film that sort of deals with a person rebuilding themselves after the horrors of war, and a nation rebuilding itself after the horrors of war, and this survivor's guilt of this man who lived because he was a coward in his mind while all of the other brave soldiers around him died, and he's still fighting the war. They keep talking about that. For me, the war isn't over. So it's a well done, serious drama about this PTSD and this man who feels this tremendous guilt, and he sort of has this de facto family that has come together by this, as I started to say, this woman who he found wandering the rubble, and this baby who she found, an orphan, and a woman and this man, and they somehow formed a family, and that's the way we all became the Godzilla bunch. So it's a lot of this drama, and then Godzilla starts coming back again. Now, Godzilla in this film is not a guy in a suit, and I know for some of us, Godzilla was always a physical presence on film. Less so in the newer films that do rely on CGI, but Godzilla, even when and this is where I'm going to go back to the old ways, practical effects, even if they look fake, at least look like they're really there. CGI has come a long way, but to me, 80 to 90% of the time, CGI still kind of looks fake. It still kind of looks like that thing isn't really there. The way things move, and yeah, you're asking me, well, what is a giant Godzilla supposed to look like in reality? I don't know, but the CGI Godzilla, it moved in such a way that it took me out of it a little bit, let's say that. This Godzilla goes back to Godzilla not being a nice guy. This Godzilla is terrifying and huge and just a force of nature, and it just exists to crash things and wreak havoc and blast that atomic breath. And the creature design is a little busy. I'm not a fan of the more modern Godzillas where it's a gigantic body and a little tiny head. This kind of has that going on. Very, very like roided up kind of Godzilla, and a lot of spikes and a lot of visual stuff going on. It reminded me of the Transformers movies, which I'm not a fan of, where the Transformers just have so much going on, all these moving parts and all these things. At times they're visually hard to kind of understand what you're looking at. This Godzilla kind of has that going on a little bit. It does have the Godzilla roar on occasion. The Akira Ifukube, and I'm probably mispronouncing that name, score does come into play. Actually, the greatest thrill I got in this film, other than the really good quality sound, and the occasional times when Godzilla would let loose with the blast, was hearing that classic Godzilla march through massive speakers. And you get that over the end credits. And I stayed to the end of the credits just to hear that because it was pretty cool. But overall, for me personally, the ratio wasn't quite right for my entertainment dollar, in that it was really mostly this Japanese human drama, which is really well done, and a lot less Godzilla. It's one of those things where jokingly I could be there saying, hey, it's a Godzilla movie. Where's Godzilla at? Not a lot of Godzilla. You get him a few times in these few set pieces. You get the humankind trying to figure out, with scientists and civilians and the military, how do we stop this thing? We don't know what this thing is. We kind of understand a way to maybe stop it, and that whole procedure and that whole mission is kind of exciting. But it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of talking, a lot of human drama, which again is really well done. But do I want a Godzilla movie to be that lean on Godzilla? That was my big beef with the first of the most recent US Godzilla films, is that they went out of their way to not give you Godzilla in that movie, and I couldn't get my head around it. This film isn't as bad. It's shot a little of the shaky, a little of the fast cuts here and there, which I don't love. And again, the CGI Godzilla I couldn't really love. And the spines, the Godzilla spines are like gigantic in this. And the way they show him powering up to let loose the atomic blast is kind of interesting, because he's got a little turkey's done thing going on his back. But people are loving this film. So I'm just telling you what I thought and what this movie is. It is a heavy drama. Is it good for kids? I don't know. Like, it's not really, there's nothing really objectionable in it, but will a kid sit through all of that dialogue and all of that heavy drama? Shin Godzilla was similar. Shin Godzilla was a lot of talk. It was a lot of spoofery of Japanese bureaucracy, but to me it delivered much more and better on the Godzilla action aspect of it. So this, again, it takes it way back to the beginning. It takes it back, including some let's say nods, let's say lifts, let's say homages, whatever you want to call it, recreations of some scenes from the original 50s Godzilla. It takes it back to that. So some people are really appreciative that it is a serious Godzilla. It is a standalone. It's set in the past. So how do they use weapons and technology and knowledge of the day to fight Godzilla, which is an interesting idea. And I'm watching this thinking about it after the fact too. I'm like, man, I would have liked it if they took it a little bit farther back. And let's say it's the heat of World War II, and you've got American planes dogfighting with Japanese planes, and all of a sudden Godzilla shows up in the middle of that. And then they both have to decide, are we going to fight each other, or are we going to fight Godzilla? The kind of alternate history thing, the kind of Joya Noel thing, that could have been really an interesting way to go. Maybe they will. I'm all for taking Godzilla even farther back. Make it a Daimajin or Daimjin or whatever you want to call it thing where it's feudal Japan and Godzilla shows up. I mean, why not? You really can go anywhere you want with these things, especially if you're making them standalones. Standalone story that doesn't really exist in the universe of any of the other ones. Anyway, your mileage may vary. Tell me what you think. I'm sure everybody will like this far more than me, but I'm reading today so many people who are just losing their minds over this movie, and I'm just thinking, did I see the same film? Like, I was kind of bored during this film. I was getting kind of restless, but I'm not going to say it wasn't well made. I'm not going to say the effects were good. I'm not going to say Godzilla isn't badass and scary in this film. It's just, I kind of wanted more Godzilla and less of the humans. So at any rate, in theaters currently as I record this, see it in the theater if you can, soon to be certainly on video and Blu-ray, is Godzilla -1.